Hello and welcome to the Explosive Strength Podcast with Jared Bidney. Today's episode is going to be a Q&A episode from questions that I've received from email and Instagram. So, like I said, when I first started this podcast, my goal was to teach and try to help people understand what I do. So, for those of you that send in questions, I really appreciate it. Before we get started, got a little rant. Kind of pisses me off, but anyway, I'll have some athletes that will come to the gym and their parents will look at my equipment and see it's just basic equipment. So they'll go buy it for their home and they'll train their athlete at home or have some of the stuff that I have so that the athlete can train at home so that they're able to save money instead of paying to come to the gym. But what they do not understand is, number one, you're taking out the atmosphere. Number two, you're taking out the competition. Number three, you're taking out the testing. And number four, more than likely, they have no clue what they're doing. Number five, they need to understand it's the methods of the exercise that produces the results. It's not the exercise itself. So if we're squatting at the gym and they see us squatting, the parents don't understand that we are using different methods while we squat, so that if we continually change the methods and we continually squat, our squat will continue to change. Okay, and we can change things to change the external resistance of the squat, change the bar, change the box, squat with the box, front squat, no box, and so forth and so on. So just because you have the equipment does not mean you understand training. Okay. So let's get to the first question. The first question comes from Reagan Drake. He said, I just listened to the podcast, and I know this isn't something you train, but is there a difference in the effect of explosive strength between doing box squats and a pause squat? I would think it serves the same purpose, breaking up the eccentric concentric chain that you talked about. Does it have the same effect on explosive strength? Yes. If the athlete consistently hits the proper depth and tries to accelerate against the bar. So you got to have a good pause and great acceleration. But what you'll see if you're training athletes, if you're training them without the box, when they're scared or they're not going to get the weight, they'll go down and won't pause, or they won't hit constant depth or consistent depth the whole time. So you got too many factors in there that can go wrong. Not pausing, not staying consistent with pause, and not consistently hitting depth. But it would have, I do believe, if you do have the mind frame to sit and pause and do what you're supposed to, and you fight against the numbers of a tendo unit, I think it will create the same explosive power. But I don't know. There's a thing, when you box squat, you got to twitch. And I'll probably do a YouTube video on the twitch later to show you what that looks like, because you can slightly relax at the bottom on the box versus staying tight on a pause squat without the box. I think the pause squat without the box would have a transfer to strongman movements and powerlifting movements and things like that. I've not really seen much of a correlation to sprint speed with pause squats without the box, because sometimes they don't have that twitch factor. That's something that you're going to have to experiment with and try to figure out if you're concerned with running speed and stuff. For me, I do a pause squat with a safety squat bar without the box, and I do get an increase in explosive power. My vertical jump goes up. I actually achieved a 37-inch vertical at 225 doing a pause safety squat bar. But I always hit my depth, and I was very consistent with it, and I've always accelerated and fought against the tendo unit trying to get my speeds where I wanted them. Okay. So Reagan, hopefully that answered your question. My next question is actually from Chris Robertson. Chris is a development strength coach from Rugby, Canada. So he's from Canada. That's pretty cool. Number one question is, how did I determine 0.6 meters for box squats? Well, we don't use our box squats as a static dynamic method. We use box squats to increase strength speed. So we're trying to move a weight around the 0.6 meters per second. Once you get to 8, like what Louis talks about, 8 meters, now I think even they're getting up to closer. They're moving stuff at 1.0 meters per second. When you're doing stuff that fast, you're working on speed strength and not strength speed. So with both of them, you're getting a neural activation to where you're increasing rate of force development. So you can increase rate of force with a heavy weight moved at slow speeds or a lightweight moved at very maximum speeds. So how we came up with the 0.6 meters per second It's a strength speed method, but I just came out and I found the biggest results come with 0.6 meters, just as a measurable. You're around probably 80%, maybe. Some people can, some people can't. You can max someone out and they're moving 70% or even 65% at 0.8. I just found that with the 0.6 meters per second is a good gauge to increase that strength speed. So like when Lasky went from 315 to 405, I just measured 0.6 and he went from moving a relative body weight of 1.42 times body weight to moving 1.72 times body weight at the same speed. And that's kind of when I stuck to the 0.6 meters per second. So it's just, we're squatting to increase our speed, our strength speed, and not our speed strength. Okay. So is there an upper limit to that 0.65 meters per second? Yes. If they're squatting something in the sevens, I'll increase the weight to keep them in the sixes. All right. Sometimes, depending on the reps or how many reps I want in the six, if we're doing sets of 3 or sets of 5, I have a certain number of reps that I want to hit at 0.6 meters per second. But I also allow them to go as far as maybe sets of 3. If we were doing a set of 3 and the first set's like a 5-1, next set's a 4-7, next set maybe a 3-8. That's okay. We rest long, generally anywhere between 4 and 5 minutes on our squats to make sure our numbers do not drop for the second set. So if I wanted to do second set, you got a 5, 4-7, or a 3-8 or a 3-9. I try to get you to beat your speeds on your second and third sets, depending on how many sets we're doing. But the lower number moved at a slower speed will help increase the other weight in the 6 range and help press that 6 to a 7. So once it gets a 6 to a 7, we just kind of wave and go back and forth. So is there an upper limit? 7-1. I think once they're moving anything faster than a 0.71, increase the weight. Do I use a similar method for bench press? No, the Tendo unit does not read my bench press. My stroke pattern's roughly about 9 inches. So the Tendo unit does not pick it up. So anything over, I think you need about over 12 inches for the Tendo unit to pick it up. I do have other devices that do measure at shorter distances. And I put both devices up to my squat bar. And so when I squat, they get the same reading, but the numbers are different. It's almost, if I'm moving something at a 0.6 on squat, you're probably moving it around a 0.32 or somewhere around there on the bench. So it's a significant difference between the bench and stuff. So sometimes when I was benching, my last rep would be about a 0.19. But I was not going for necessarily speed or trying to wave it like that. And I don't have enough of those devices to put it on enough of the kids at the gym to figure that out. The thing about the Tendo unit is that when you're squatting, and you can actually get immediate feedback per squat rep, because you can see, okay, 7-1. All right, let's try to get another 7. Okay, damn, 6-9. And so I kind of go about my squats that way, where I look at the number per rep. I'm not just sitting there knocking out each rep. When we're squatting to beat a number, trying to get the best number possible. So it's not about how fast you do the set, it's about how fast you do each rep within the set. Then we take longer rest breaks so that our energy systems recover, so that we're able to produce the same number or better on our second set. Now, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. But benching, a method we use for bench would be a static dynamic method. We pause bench. We do pause bench a good bit. We don't pause the first rep. We don't pause the last rep. We pause all freaking reps if we're doing pause bench. If we're going through a phase where we're pause benching, if I got you doing a set of 5, you're coming down, you're pausing, and you're trying to accelerate the bar as fast as possible. So if we got a set of 3, you're pausing all 3. In competition, you got to start and a press command and a rack command. So we practice against that. You'll see a lot of power lifters go to meet, and they don't really, you can tell they don't practice pause benching a lot. And one meet we had, is the most bizarre question I think I've ever had. He goes, "What do y'all do for bench?" I said, "Hell, I don't know." That's what I was thinking in my head. We bench. But if you look around, we pause bench a lot of reps, and a lot of people were not. And that's how you get a 15-year-old kid weighing 151 pounds to bench 325 in international competition. Raw. That's a raw 15-year-old bench, 325 at 151 body weight. So for benching our pause, I guess, Chris, I'm hoping to answer your question without getting off on too much of other tangent or losing my thought process. But we use a static dynamic method for bench, but if you use it too often, you can inflame your bicep tendon. It's because that tendon has to re-engage if you're accelerating and twitching right, which can cause some type of tendonitis issue. So if you're getting tendonitis from doing too much pause benching, increase your reps. Do not pause. Training the triceps will also take stress off the front side of the body. I do a lot of tricep work. So that's a little bit for bench. His fourth question, you try to squat 2 times per week. Do you use a similar workout, or do you change loading by changing sets, reps, intensity, or bar speed? Okay. The sets, most of the time we're doing anywhere between 4 and 5 sets of squat. The reps change from workout 1 to workout 2 based off of how their speed numbers look at particular sets at the weight. So depending on one workout, the next workout is going to be determined by their speed number. So that's why it's very critical that you have a Tendo unit and you're measuring stuff. Just because an athlete feels like crap does not mean he's not. You can have an athlete come in and they'll feel like crap. And they're like, man, I can't do this today. Yeah, you can. You're going to do it. And what you'll see is they'll beat the freaking numbers. So I hate the RPE scale. I don't know where it came from. I don't care to know where it comes from. The RPE scale, rate of perceived exertion, rate at which you perceive how hard you're freaking trying. Okay. That does not work. I think you need to get with NCSA, and we need to get the RPE scale thrown out the window. I've seen it too many times to where an athlete will come in and they don't feel good, and they're beating the numbers. They're beating the numbers on the jump mat. They're beating the numbers on the tread sled. They're beating the numbers on the Tendo unit, but they may not feel the best. And so they feel like the rep's bad, but they're looking at the speed, and the speed number's good. So I think you shouldn't base anything off how you're feeling. You need to throw your freaking feelings out the window or leave them at the door when you enter the gym, because an RPE scale is how you feel. The Tendo unit is what you're actually doing, okay? So we need to figure out how to bump this up to where we got more people using more devices to measure their actual training instead of their thought process. Too many people are also weak-minded too when it comes to it. But let's see if I can get back on track thinking about the freaking RPE scale. I don't like it, okay? I think it's stupid. You can have an athlete who will come in one day and they'll feel great, man, I'm ready to max, I'm ready to beat my numbers. They come in and they do horrible, so that's why I don't like it. Okay, so whatever. So the intensity and all that stuff's based off speed numbers. I don't have a definite system. I don't use necessarily a percent-based system. Sometimes I can get an athlete to move, change their bar speeds pretty quickly. And if they're always fighting against the numbers, they'll always change their numbers. But if they're not squatting with the Tendo unit, I don't think. And if you're trying to push somebody from point A to point B at a quick rate, you're going to need something to measure so you know what's going on all the time. Now, if someone's beat up and I manipulate so if they're beat up, if I want certain numbers, I manipulate if they're supposed to come and say do 315 instead of sets of 3, and I want them to hit 0.6 and they hit 0.4s, I will probably drop the weight down to where I'm getting the speed numbers that I want to. That will allow me to let the athlete recover and figure out where to go from there. Okay. So, speed of the bar. So, Chris, hopefully I answered your questions on that. My next question comes from Bird of Bird Sports Performance in Pennsylvania. He asked if I do speed squats. No. Not in the form of producing speed strength results. Like I said earlier, when Louis is talking about bar speed and everything else, they're using bar speed. They're trying to increase their speed strength with a bar speed at 0.8 meters or 0.7 meters or higher, okay? They're increasing their speed strength specific to their sport. Most athletes jump. We jump a lot at the gym. So our speed strength thing we do is we jump. And we use our squats to increase our strength speed. Both of them are geared toward increasing rate of force development. So we're maximizing both velocity ranges by squatting at certain rates of speed and by jumping at certain rates of speed. So like the strength speed, you're trying to move a heavy weight as fast as possible. And like you're stating, the dynamic effort method is lifting a submaximal weight at the fastest possible speeds where you're getting that higher end speed greater than 1 meter per second. Okay. So no, we don't do speed squats. We do a form of speed squats, but there's not a Westside technical term for speed squats because we use speed squats to increase our strength speed instead of our speed strength. We use, okay. The dynamic effort method is not an exercise, it's a method. How you use the method is up to you. And I choose to use it as a form of jumps. Like I said, dynamic effort method work we do is jumping, lifting a submaximal weight at the fastest speeds possible. That's why in Louis' articles, it just always talks about moving the bar at 0.8 meters per second. And now it's actually getting closer to 1. Speed squats are specific to their sports. Athletes have to jump, and in my opinion, the best way to enhance the rate of force development in athletes is to jump, and it's highly correlated with sprint speed, okay? Just a side note on jump, I have 3 of my basketball players at Clayton State University that will jump a 40-plus inch vertical this year, and the highest one last year was 34. I only get to deal with my athletes 7 months out of the year. And I wanted to bring that up because jumping, you can create a residual effect. I think Buddy Morris talks about this in some things he does. Once it's in there, it's in there. And you don't have to necessarily pound it all the time. Just like I had a kicker, Jameson Vest, he was messaging me today, and he was asking me how long he should kick. If you're starting to do crappy, he said he read something about an hour. I'm not reading it off my text messages. So he kicks. I said, look, if you go out there and you kick for 20 minutes and you start to feel crappy, you quit. It's just kind of, there's no sense of beating you down and ingraining poor technique. And so what I'm getting is he's a higher level athlete. He kicks for Toledo. He's on the Lou Groza watch list. He's got a chance to win the best kicker in the country. He's on track to break the school all-time scoring record. It should be a pretty good pick in the draft next year. So for him at that high risk, he can skip a week off, just like Tiger Woods can skip a week or whatever off golf and still come back pretty strong. You'll always have some type of residual effect. And what I'm getting at is my basketball players, we've not jumped since April, and they were no more than 2 inches off of their best. So now we're coming in with the last year at a 34, and some of them even hit the same numbers they hit when we left off, because they're running and the stuff that they're doing and they're playing in their sport is maintaining a certain quality of that quality that we placed in them. Okay. And for those of you, I'm actually going to come out with a book on jump training to show exactly how we do it. I'm not sure when it will be, but I have actually started working on that book. Okay. So for those of you, we're going to do a jump book if you're interested. Okay. Well, it's going to be out there even if you're not interested. Okay. And next question comes from Graham Wilkerson. Graham is from Genesis Sports Performance in Indianapolis. And Graham said he's been using the conjugate system, and we've rotated jump variations every 3 weeks. Our athletes' strength and jump numbers improve, but not to the high 30s and 40s that you produce. I keep the volume between 60 and 100 jumps a week. Okay. All right. Well, I'll start there. Graham, we do not monitor jump volume. I don't count jumps per week or jumps per day. Do you rotate your jump variations? I pretty much stick with dumbbell jumps. Been doing dumbbell jumps, I think, 7 years now. And last year, the National Strength Conditioning Association actually published that jumping with weights actually produces greater jump height than other methods. And so I'm glad I did not wait till this year to start doing dumbbell jumps, because I've come up with my own rotations and how I wave my weights up and down, which will be in the book, and some other things I've experimented with. So do I find that the weighted verticals, in addition to your strength training, produce most benefit? Yes, I think jumping, like I said earlier, jumping with the weight is a speed strength method. enhancing rate of force development, and we're also squatting to increase our strength speed. So both of those we're hitting two methods to increase our rate of force development. All athletic training is doing is trying to increase type 2 fibers, okay? And we'll do some type of inertial exercise for our sprints. So the, Graham, I hope I answered that question. We, rotations, we don't always do just dumbbell jumps. Mostly we do, but sometimes we may do a seated box vertical, or we'll do a depth jump where we land on a mat and jump up and land back down, record that number. These numbers are supposed to be per workout. So if you come in and you jump a 31.2 inch vertical from a depth jump, next workout, you better beat that number. And sometimes, like I said, we don't count the volume. If you come in and you beat your vertical on the third or fourth jump from what you did last time, you move on. Because sometimes you may sit there 10, 15 minutes and can't beat your number. Once we realize that number is not going to beat that day, whether we crank up the music, gather people around you, we'll do tricks. I'm actually going to do a podcast with Zach Lasky, and we're going to talk about how we got his numbers to change and what we did for his pro day training. But some days we may spend longer, and some days it just depends on if we're beat up or not. So if we're coming in, like I said, some days you can use a jump mat to test your athletes whether they're beat up or not. If they're coming in and their jumps are complete butt, and they're not even close to beating it, move on, because they are beat up that day. So then that will give you an indication of how you can kind of squat them as you go on. That's the thing about dealing with athletes is depending on what their practice load is, school load, or whatever they're doing, can determine how they train that day. And sometimes when you get them out of season, you can really grind and push and still force them to jump. But again, Graham, we do not calculate or count our jumps. So hopefully that answers your question. Rotating, we may do depth jumps for a while. We don't do depth jumps and dumbbell jumps in the same day. We pick one and we run with it for a while until the numbers don't change. Then we may rotate exercise, or we may rotate how we do the exercise, just kind of like squats and everything else. But all that will be in that jump book. So anyway, you can reach me at info@Explosive Mechanics for email. Follow me on Instagram @Explosive Mechanics. You can also check out my website, jaredbidney. No, jaredbidney.com. It's not jared@jaredbidney.com. It's jaredbidney.com. So for guys, hey, I really appreciate you sending in those questions. I hope I answered them. So anyway, until next time, thanks.